Hello, for this video I am using a commissioned pet portrait of Bear to explain this process. In this tutorial, I will share with you the 5 main things you need to know to create realistic short fur. The first thing you need to know is layering. To be able to create realistic short fur, layering is crucial. For Bear's fur, both in the dark areas of his fur and in the light ones, I need to build up color. For example, I will start with the light area around his left eye. I'll begin with adding a very light layer of deco pink, making sure I add an even amount of deco pink throughout the area I'm working in. Then I'm going to go in with a 10% cool gray. This color is very soft, so I use it to go over the deco pink to smooth out the surface. I also extend the light fur area with this gray. Due to the light fur not being all pink, I need another base layer for those other areas. With the fur being white, I use this light gray. With the base layer mostly complete, I go in with a 70% French gray and outline the darker areas. I do this to get a feel for where the different patches of fur are. I want to copy the reference photo as much as I can. A way I can do this is by marking where these patches of fur are. I'm going to go back in with a deco pink and 10% cool gray to continue building layers up. I also go in with a seashell pink to continue to add depth into the fur. Now going into this next part, the second thing you need to learn is that each section is not meant to be separated, but united together to become whole. I'm going to take a pause in the light areas and begin layering with the dark areas. In my drawings, I do not separate the two sections, but work on each of them simultaneously in order to connect them. In the light fur, there are pieces of dark fur, and the opposite is likewise. These sections cannot be too distinct to where they look out of place, but they need to complete each other. This is another thing that makes a drawing realistic. To build up the layers for the dark fur, I go in with a 20% warm gray as my base layer. I then go in with my 50% warm gray, and I top it off with a layer of 90% cool gray. The third thing you need to know is time. You need to work slow for many reasons. First of all, especially with a base layer, you need to have a sharp tip and slowly fill in the area you're working in. If you take your time and go slow, you have a better chance of filling in the entire area, so that when you go in with darker colors, you have a smooth texture. If you fail to do this, your area becomes splotchy. Second, when you take your time, you are able to add more details in than you would when you are rushing. So once I have the entire space filled in, the layering mainly complete, I add in black in the darkest areas and a bit of 10% cool gray to the highlights. I then begin to work on the finer details, combining the two sections together. I shift back into the lighter areas, refining the base layers and adding in the top layers. The fourth thing you need to know is details. Notice how I only add in the fine details once I complete the layering. Doing this is efficient. If I go in with all the details before finishing layering, it will ruin the texture I'm trying to create. I will either have to go over the section again to fill in those spaces and add in the necessary colors, or if I stop at these details, the sections are left incomplete, and it won't turn out as smooth as the reference picture shows. Now I'm going to take a break from discussing what I'm doing, and I would like you just to watch as I finish up these lighter areas. Alright, I will now begin to work on the right side of the face. As I did with the left side, I work my way up with the colors. I start with a 20% warm gray and move on to a 50% warm gray. With the 50% warm gray, I go into all of the darker areas of the face. Unlike with the other side, the right side has a lot of highlighted areas. I outline them and work around them for right now. This is the fifth thing you need to know. Highlights. Not all the light areas contain the same colors. Part of the light areas involved pink, others involved grays. Some involved both. I begin with my base layer of 20% warm gray, and then shift and use my 50% warm gray around all of the darker areas of the face, as I had mentioned. Once I finish in with the 50% warm gray, I use the 20% warm gray to smooth out the area. Then I fill in the darker areas with black. At this point, the area looks incomplete, the two sections way too distinct that it doesn't look realistic. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. So instead of stopping here, I continue adding in color. I go in with a 50% warm gray, and then back in with a 20% warm gray. I work backwards, dark to light, rather than what I did before with working light to dark. I continue to touch up this area, blending the two sections together while still keeping the two sections their own shades of color. With this section complete, this is where I begin to add in the final details. I add a few black furs sticking out into the lighter areas by simply using a sharpened black colored pencil. But how do you make white fur stick out into the dark fur when you've already added in all of your layering? That's where my trusty craft knife comes in. And it's another reason why layering is so important and enables you to be able to use a craft knife. The craft knife scratches off the top layers to reveal the base layer. Without applying the proper base layers, this cannot be achieved. The same goes for the opposite. Without applying the proper top layers, for example, the dark grays and the black, this cannot be achieved either. And to wrap it up, I add the highlights in the eyes. And this is all for this tutorial. Thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you've learned something from it. Please comment down below any suggestions you have for future tutorials. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.